European Union started out as a coal and steel community with just 6 members. It became what it is today to achieve the aim of a common agriculture policy with the elimination of customs barrier. Last year has seen a lot of discussion about Brexit and the EU. But what is Brexit? Brexit refers to UK's decision to leave the European Union in a referendum conducted on June 23, 2016. In the referendum, where the turnout was 72.2%, 51.9% of the ballot voted for leave, while 48.1% voted for remain. The results had a jarring effect on the global markets, causing the British pound to fall to its lowest level. Prime Minister David Cameron, who had called the referendum and campaigned for Britain to remain in the EU, resigned on July 13th. Home Secretary Theresa May, who had replaced Cameron as the leader of the Conservative Party a couple of days earlier, succeeded him as Prime Minister. The results were tallied across UK, but the overall result concealed stark regional differences. 53.4% of the English voters supported Brexit, compared to just 38% of Scottish voters. Because England accounts for the vast majority of UK's population, support therefore swayed with the result in Brexit's favour. People who voted for Leave argued that European Union laws and regulations threatened British authority and therefore pushed for restoration of national independence and safe and secure borders. Leaving the EU would also result in immediate cost saving as the country would no longer contribute to the EU budget. Opponents of Brexit, on the other hand, argue that there is great risk involved in pulling out of EU's decision-making process, given that it is by far the largest destination for British exports. Another reason for remaining in EU is the economic and societal benefits, the free movement of goods, services, capital and people across borders. A common thread in both arguments is that leaving the EU would destabilize the British economy. So how does Britain leave the EU? Article 50 is a clause in the European Union's Lisbon Treaty that outlines the steps to be taken by a country seeking to leave the bloc voluntarily. Invoking Article 50 kickstarts the formal exit process and serves as a way for countries to officially declare their intention to leave the EU. British Prime Minister Theresa May is expected to become the first leader to invoke Article 50.
The bill on Article 50 successfully completed its passage through both houses unchanged. It will now proceed to royal assent in the coming days, so we remain on track with the timetable I set out 6 months ago. And I will return to this House before the end of this month to notify when I have formally triggered Article 50 and begun the process through which the United Kingdom will leave the European Union. This will be a defining moment for our whole country as we begin to forge a new relationship with Europe and a new role for ourselves in the world. We will be a strong, self-governing global Britain with control once again over our borders and our laws. And we will use this moment of opportunity to build a stronger economy and a fairer society so that we secure both the right deal for Britain abroad and a better deal for ordinary working people at home.
It is at this point UK will have 2 years to negotiate a new relationship with the EU. The Treasury has reported lasting damage to the economy under any 3 possible post-Brexit scenarios. The first possible scenario is the European Economic Area membership like Norway has. The EEA promotes free trade and movement of goods via the EU single market. It would require UK to pay the EU and it would relinquish any say in the laws and regulations set because it would be giving up voting rights in the European Council and the European Parliament. Also, joining the EEA would mean that UK would have to accept free movement of people, which would be in conflict with their stance on immigration. Another option is comprehensive economic and trade agreement like that which was negotiated between the EU and Canada in October 2016. We also have to consider the fact that Canada already enjoys free trade with the United States via the North American Free Trade Agreement NAFTA. So with the NAFTA already in place, the importance of trade agreement with the EU is not as important for Canada as it would be for EU, as it would be for UK. Moreover, CETA does not include financial services, which is a substantial part of the UK's trade with the EU. Another option is the World Trade Organization. The UK would be solely relying on this organization in dealing with the EU. This would mean the most conclusive split with the EU and access to the EU single market. Not only would the UK be giving up its trade agreement with the EU, but it would also surrender trade agreements with 53 other countries it is entitled to via the EU's free trade agreement. The Brexit will have an impact on both the UK and the EU on many different fronts. For example, trade within Europe. In the case of UK, regulatory divergence would grow over time, increasing the cost of trade. In the case of trade policy, the European Union will be perceived as a less attractive trade partner without the UK in deal. In the case of foreign direct investments, UK will appear as less attractive as a gateway to Europe. On the other hand, for the European Union, businesses would find it very costly to relocate investments from the UK. And there is also a risk that the UK will attempt to undercut the European Union on standards to attract FDI. In the case of immigration, UK is likely to tighten its borders, damaging competitiveness, particularly in London. In international influence, the UK loses the benefit from being able to influence both in and through the EU. On the other hand, the European Union loses substantial soft and hard power assets. In the case of budget, the UK gains financially. On the other hand, the European Union loses budget disciplinarian and a major net contributor. An important fact to consider is that Great Britain is a combination of Scotland, England and Wales who joined together in 1707. Hence, it is important to note that not one Scottish local area voted to leave the EU, according to the UK's Electoral Commission. In 2014, a referendum was held to vote on Scottish independence, and while that resulted in Remain, this new situation has the SNP leader Nicola Sturgeon calling for a second referendum.
Take the steps necessary to make sure that Scotland will have a choice at the end of this process. A choice of whether to follow the UK to a hard Brexit or to become an independent country, able to secure a real partnership of equals with the rest of the UK and our own relationship with Europe. The Scottish Government's mandate for offering this choice is beyond doubt.
Of this second referendum is to be held in the autumn of 2018 or the spring of 2019. The timing is significant, assuming that the British government triggers the Article 50 in March 2017. The deadline would fall in spring 2019, and the politics surrounding Brexit could be partially volatile. Let's see what Theresa May has to say.
MP government say that it's the time to start talking about a second independence referendum. I say that just at this point, all our energies should be focused on our negotiations with the European Union about our future relationship. And to be talking about an independence referendum would, I think, make it more difficult for us to be able to get the right deal for Scotland and the right deal for the UK. And more than that, I think it wouldn't be fair to the people of Scotland because they'd be being asked to make a crucial decision without the necessary information, without knowing what the future partnership will be or what the alternative of an independent Scotland would look like. So I think just now we should be putting all our energies into ensuring that we get that right deal for the UK and the right deal for Scotland in our negotiations with the European Union. That's my job as Prime Minister.
In conclusion, the impact of Brexit on British business, the UK economy, and the wider British interests would be severe and felt across multiple channels. All member states will definitely feel the impact of Brexit, both politically and economically. The export, supply chain, investment and policy interests of many large corporates would be adversely affected. Both the path and the endpoint in terms of the new relationship between the UK and the rest of the European Union is uncertain, but perhaps the single biggest impact will be on the cost of raising finance in Europe. Until Article 50 is invoked, all we can do is speculate, but it will be interesting to see how Britain will navigate through these new terrains.